At 80 years old, Priscilla Presley has finally broken her silence about the man the world still calls the king of rock and roll. For more than 4 decades, she carried secrets too painful to share, hiding the truth behind a carefully crafted image. But now, with her own life nearing its final chapters, she is ready to speak, and what she reveals is nothing short of heartbreaking. This is not the glamorous love story the world imagined. This is a story of love, loss, and betrayal that changes everything we thought we knew about Elvis Presley. Before we dive into video, please subscribe to our channel. Priscilla Presley was never just Elvis' wife. She was the woman who stood by his side through the brightest highs and the darkest lows, the mother of his only child, and the keeper of his most private struggles. Meeting Elvis at just 14, Priscilla was swept into a world of glamour, music, and fame that most people could only dream of. Yet behind the lights and the screaming fans, she lived a reality few could ever understand. She saw the Elvis that the cameras never captured, the man torn between being the king for the world and a fragile human being in private. For years, Priscilla protected his image, keeping silent even when she witnessed his pain. She endured the chaos of fame, the pressures of Graceland, and the heavy shadow of those who controlled Elvis' every move. Unlike outsiders who only heard rumors, Priscilla lived inside that storm, and she knew the truth better than anyone. Her silence was not weakness, it was survival. But time has changed her perspective. Now, at 80, she has nothing left to lose and everything to reveal. Her words carry the weight of history, because no one else can tell this story like she can. For decades, Priscilla Presley avoided interviews that asked about Elvis' darkest moments. She would smile, share light memories, and quickly change the subject whenever the conversation turned painful. But the turning point came when she was asked a simple question that cut deeper than she expected. What do you wish the world knew about Elvis that has never been told? For the first time, Priscilla did not deflect. Her silence broke and her voice carried the weight of years of buried grief. She admitted that keeping quiet for so long had been a heavy burden, one she carried to protect Elvis' legacy, their daughter Lisa Marie, and even herself. Priscilla revealed that she had been pressured for years by Elvis' circle to maintain the image of the king perfect, untouchable, larger than life. She was told that the truth would only destroy his legend and hurt those who depended on his name. But after Lisa Marie's tragic passing, Priscilla felt the time had come. She could no longer protect an image built on silence while carrying the pain alone. At 80, she finally chose honesty over secrecy, and with that choice, she opened the door to truths that the world was never meant to hear. Once Priscilla began to speak, the picture she painted was far darker than anyone expected. She described how Elvis' struggles weren't only about fame, stress, or even his failing health. They were rooted in a toxic web of people who claimed to love him but were quietly breaking him down. Priscilla admitted she often felt helpless, watching the man she loved being pulled in directions that were destroying him. The public saw the glamorous Graceland, the packed Vegas shows, and the flash of the jumpsuits. But she saw a different world, one filled with manipulation, control, and betrayal. She recalled times when Elvis confided that he felt like a prisoner in his own home, unable to trust even those closest to him. Colonel Tom Parker controlled every major decision, often putting money above Elvis's well-being. Members of the so-called Memphis M, Afia, who appeared to be loyal friends, were enabling his dangerous habits while profiting from his dependence. And behind it all, doctors provided endless prescriptions that only deepened his downward spiral. For Priscilla, the hardest part was not just watching Elvis crumble, it was knowing he wanted change but was too trapped to escape. She now believes that forces around him worked tirelessly to keep him weak, dependent, and silent. When Priscilla finally revealed her most guarded memory, it sent chills through those who heard it. She recalled a night when Elvis sat with her in private, far away from the noise of fans and the demands of his entourage. In a rare moment of vulnerability, Elvis confessed something that shook her deeply. He told her he felt trapped not just by fame, but by the very people who surrounded him every day. "They do not want me to get better," he whispered, his voice filled with exhaustion and fear. "If I am strong again, I won't need them, and that scares them." Priscilla admitted this was the moment she realized the battle Elvis was fighting was not only against drugs or loneliness. It was against an entire system built to control him. He feared that his health, his money, and even his freedom were being managed in ways designed to keep him weak. It was not paranoia. It was a desperate plea for help from a man who could no longer trust anyone around him. This chilling confession has haunted Priscilla for decades. She stayed silent out of fear and loyalty, but now she admits the truth. Elvis knew he was being broken down from within. and his cry for help, once whispered to her in private, has become her loudest reason for finally speaking out. Priscilla's heartbreaking confession did not stand alone. She backed it up with details that revealed just how deep the corruption around Elvis truly ran. She described how Colonel Tom Parker kept Elvis locked into grueling schedules, forcing him into endless shows and tours even when his body was giving out. Money always came first, and Elvis' health was treated as a distant second. Parker was not just a manager, he was the gatekeeper of Elvis' life, controlling his career, finances, and even who could get close to him. But Parker was not the only one. Priscilla explained how members of the Memphis Mafia, who were supposed to be Elvis's friends, often fueled his addiction rather than helped him fight it. Pills were constantly available, pushed into his hand whether he wanted them or not. When he tried to resist, someone always found a way to bring them back into his reach. These so-called friends knew that a dependent Elvis was easier to manage and easier to exploit. Even doctors, who should have protected him, played a devastating role. Priscilla revealed how Elvis was given dangerous combinations of prescriptions that no responsible physician would allow. Instead of helping him recover, they deepened his dependency, keeping him locked in a cycle that drained his strength and his spirit. To Priscilla, it became painfully clear Elvis wasn't just destroyed by fame. He was surrounded by people who needed him weak, who thrived on his vulnerability, and who profited from his decline. Priscilla recalls one night that still echoes in her memory, the moment Elvis could no longer contain his frustration. She described a confrontation inside Graceland that shook the entire house. Elvis had discovered troubling details about his finances and contracts, and when he confronted Colonel Tom Parker, the exchange turned explosive. Elvis shouted that he was being robbed, that the money he worked himself to exhaustion for was being siphoned away. He waved papers in anger, demanding answers, while Parker stood firm, cold, and calculating, reminding him of obligations and commitments that Elvis never truly agreed to. Priscilla remembers standing nearby, watching the man she loved pour out years of bottled-up rage. He wanted to break free. He wanted new management, a new life, and a chance to finally take back control. But Parker wasn't about to let go. His empire depended on Elvis staying under his thumb. The shouting match ended with Elvis storming out, but the fear in Priscilla's heart never left. In the days that followed, she noticed something deeply unsettling. Whenever Elvis tried to distance himself from the pills, more would suddenly appear in his room. When he attempted to change his diet, unhealthy food laced with sedatives was offered. It felt like sabotage, a deliberate effort to keep him unwell. For Priscilla, that confrontation was proof of how dangerous the situation had become. Elvis wasn't just fighting addiction. He was fighting powerful forces determined to keep him dependent, controlled, and silent. When Elvis died on August 16, 1977, Priscilla's grief was indescribable. Yet what haunted her even more was what she saw in the hours and days that followed. She expected chaos, heartbreak, and devastation at Graceland. Instead, she witnessed something cold, organized, and deeply unsettling. People who should have been shattered by loss were moving with precision, as if they had rehearsed this moment in advance. Priscilla recalled how prescription bottles vanished almost instantly. Rooms were cleaned, papers were gathered, and key pieces of evidence that might have raised questions seemed to disappear overnight. To her, it was not mourning. It was management. The official story of Elvis' accidental overdose was quickly shaped, polished, and pushed to the public long before the autopsy results were finalized. She remembers the words used in those first days, how consistent everyone's accounts suddenly became. Friends who were usually scattered in their stories suddenly sounded rehearsed, repeating the same phrases as if they had been given a script. Even Ginger Alden, Elvis's girlfriend at the time, appeared pressured to say only certain things. It was as though the truth had been buried before Elvis H. himself was laid to rest. What struck Priscilla the hardest was the disappearance of Elvis' personal writings. He had been documenting his struggles, his frustrations with Parker, and his desire to get clean. Priscilla knew those journals existed. She had seen them. But after his death, they were gone, wiped away as if they had never been written. For Priscilla, the cover-up was undeniable. The swiftness, the silence, and the secrecy all pointed to something much larger than a simple tragedy. It was as if Elvis' death had been expected, and the cleanup had been planned long before that August morning. And that realization has haunted her ever since. As Priscilla reflected further, she realized the conspiracy surrounding Elvis did not end with his death. It only changed shape. What she saw in the aftermath convinced her that powerful people were determined not just to silence Elvis, but to control his story forever. His passing became the foundation of a business empire, and that empire depended on the world believing the official narrative that Elvis was a tragic figure undone by his own excesses. The truth, that he was manipulated, poisoned by dependency, and crushed by those closest to him, was buried along with him. Priscilla explained how quickly Elvis' name was turned into a product. Within days of his funeral, merchandise, licensing deals, and carefully managed press releases shaped the image of a fallen star. But behind the glossy tributes, she recognized the same hands pulling the strings. The very people who had controlled him in life now controlled his legacy. They had turned his death into their final payday. Even decades later, Priscilla believes the manipulation continued. She has spoken about the estate, the massive financial interests tied to Elvis's image, and how certain truths could never be revealed without collapsing the empire built in his name. This was not just about one man's death. It was about the deliberate creation of a myth that could be sold for generations. She revealed that she stayed silent for so long partly out of fear that speaking out would not only destroy reputations, but also put her and her daughter Lisa Marie at risk. The same network that protected the lie was powerful enough to silence anyone who dared to challenge it. To Priscilla, Elvis's death was not the end of his tragedy. It was the beginning of a carefully managed deception, one that still dictates how the world remembers the king of rock and roll today. At 80 years old, Priscilla Presley no longer feels bound by silence. For decades, she protected Elvis's image, their daughter Lisa Marie, and even herself from the backlash of revealing too much. But time has taken its toll. With Lisa Marie gone and many of Elvis's inner circle already past, Priscilla feels the burden of truth resting squarely on her shoulders. She admits she cannot carry these secrets to her grave. Speaking now is not about scandal. It is about honesty, dignity, and giving the world the Elvis she knew, not the carefully managed version history has preserved. Priscilla's most haunting memory comes from a quiet night shortly before Elvis's death. He looked at her with tired eyes and said words she has never forgotten. "They are going to destroy me, and I don't know how to stop it." At the time, she tried to comfort him, believing it was exhaustion or paranoia. But now, decades later, she admits he may have been right. She also hints at personal writings and letters Elvis left behind, private words that could reveal his deepest fears. For Priscilla, those final confessions remain the most heartbreaking truth she carries today. Priscilla Presley's heartbreaking revelations force us to question everything we thought we knew about Elvis. Was his downfall the result of fame and pressure, or was it carefully orchestrated by those who claimed to love him most? Her words carry the weight of decades of silence, and now the world must decide what to bell. Do you think Priscilla's confession finally proves that Elvis was betrayed from within, or is the truth even darker than we imagine? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more untold Hollywood stories that change everything.